Would you like to learn how to pass the security architect interview presentation, which is the last interview typically for a security architect job? If so, this video is for you. Hi, my name's Mike Gibbs. I'm an enterprise architect with about 25 years experience, and I've been interviewing and hiring architects for decades. And in today's video, we're really going to talk about the security architect interview presentation. And I'm even going to make some recommendations to increase your chances of getting hired on your next security architect interview. I also want to key you into the big mistakes so many people make. They keep them from getting hired on that security architect interview presentation because I don't want you to make them and I want you to get that security architect job. So to begin, what really is the security architect interview presentation? Well, typically speaking, after several interviews, you'll be given a case study and you'll be asked to create a design around that case study and then document the case study and present it to a group of people at the company that's going to hire you. And typically that audience could be a CISO or a VP. There may be some cloud architects, security architects, enterprise architects in the panel as well, and usually a business stakeholder. And the key here is to make sure that you can speak in business terms, that you can deliver an awesome presentation, but you can see things from the strategic architect perspective as opposed to the security engineer perspective. I love security engineers. They're very important, but their role is very different of a security engineer versus a security architect. Now, generally speaking, you'll also want to have some documentation that you will bring with you to the security architect interview presentation. Typically a set of slides, maybe a one-page executive briefing that's got a target state on it and some risk management on it, some control type mapping, or what you would typically do in a one-page executive summary of your actual architecture. So what are we evaluating when you give that presentation, that security architect interview presentation? We're evaluating the following things. About a quarter of what we weigh your interview is related to business alignment and outcomes. So we expect you on a security architect interview to tie security to either revenue protection or cost avoidance or resilience or some regulatory compliance, for example. And we're looking to see that you may have measurable objective results. So what is it that your architecture did? Did it reduce lateral movement? Did it decrease the mean time to detect or mean time to repair? Typically speaking, there should be some measurable results related to your architecture, usually business as well as some technical as well. Now, about 20 to 25% of what we're looking for is about your ability to look at risks and trade-offs. We know as hiring managers for architects and any architect that there's no perfect solution. So we know that architecture is all about, looking at the various trade-offs, evaluating risks, see what's best in our business. So we're looking to see how you actually describe it. So we want to make sure that if you're discussing risk, you can quantify it by an order of magnitude or what that actual risk is. And we can compare the risk mitigation options to some options that you have. And maybe there's a best option, a second best option, and a third best option. And you've got rationale as to why. These are typically things that you would do in an architecture in a real world environment, whether it's a security architecture, cloud architecture, or enterprise architecture. And in this interview presentation that's testing your ability to deliver an architecture, they're going to want to see that. Now, about 15 to 20% of what we're looking for is your executive presence and how well you communicate. Can you communicate in board-ready communication? And are you doing so? Are you giving an executive presentation with maybe some details in the appendix? How do you handle questions and answers? Because people will be questioning your architecture and the assumptions you made, and they're going to be looking for how you defend that. So that's a big component. Somewhere about 10% of what we're looking for is the way you actually create your program and how you would deliver that program. So maybe you've got a phased roadmap of the architecture that you've designed for this. Maybe there's some dependencies, for example. So we typically would look for something like that to see how you can deliver it. Do you know what goes into delivering an architecture, even if we don't build it? Leadership and influence, that's probably another 5 to 10% of what we're looking for. We're looking to see, how you communicate with stakeholders. Do you have a stakeholder plan? Have you mapped out who potentially owners are, what have you? Now, you may not have the opportunity to do this on an interview presentation, but if you have the opportunity, map it out. But you have to show leadership and influence no matter what. About 20 to 25% of what we're looking for is actually your architecture depth and the way you think about security. We're looking to see, you get the big architecture perspective. For example, things like identity and device security and network security and app security and data security and everything that goes into it. Or are you looking at one element like a firewall or network security? Do you see the big picture? We're typically looking to see if you understand things like zero trust concepts and what that actually means, or threat modeling or things like that. So that's typically what we're looking for. Now, let me give you some recommendations that you can to help you be better on your security architect interview presentation. If you create an architecture, and this, you generally speaking have to create a security architecture for this, I want you to think of the architecture again as that holistic package. How are you going to protect that organization? So make sure your architecture has something very strong in the area of identity and access management. Make sure you probably in today's world have some zero trust security. Make sure you've got a data security plan, and that goes beyond encryption, everything from key management to tokenization, obfuscation, data lifecycle. Make sure you've got a plan for that. Make sure you've got a good plan for cloud and Kubernetes type security and what it's going to take to harden that environment. Make sure you've got something related to compliance and privacy inside of your architecture, where you can basically show like a control mapping or something to that effect, or days of residency. There should be something related to observability in your architecture, so the systems can be managed, and we can correlate the logs. Think Siemens Swarm systems and other things as well. And typically speaking, there should be some level of application security in your architecture, and probably even some business continuity or disaster recovery planning. So those are typically speaking. So here's some things that you can think about to be successful. Before the presentation, make sure you get the information, because the better your information, the better your architectural solution will be. So ask for the scenario, and if it's vague, ask clarifying questions. And if you can't ask clarifying questions, if the case study that they gave you is vague, make sure you document your assumptions. Now, when you're going to deliver this interview presentation, obviously you're going to make slides to guide the discussion. Typically speaking, I recommend you build a one-page executive brief that you can actually hand out. If you are dealing with a bank or a healthcare organization or whatever, make sure you've got something regulatory compliance related to that actual industry. Now, when you give this presentation, I want you to lead with the business outcomes and map each control that you might suggest to a risk category or a capability of the business. So show that you're getting the big business and architecture tie-in here. On these interviews, communicate in plain English. Do not use a bunch of acronyms or buzzwords. Communicate in plain English. Make sure the audience knows that you are aware of and considered the various trade-offs in your presentation. If you have the ability to quantify, do so. For example, we would like to have multi-factor authentication on 95% of the accounts within 9 months, or whatever that you're looking for. And make sure things look fairly easy to understand. And typically speaking, that's there. Now, if you can put in a plan, like a roadmap, and I'll give you a sample roadmap. We'll think out that as we're talking. For example, you might say, let's say you had a 90-day roadmap. Maybe day 0 to 30 is multi-factor authentication, let's say everywhere, where it's feasible. And then days 31 to 60 might be things like conditional access and potentially a zero trust pilot for 2 to 3 apps. And then maybe 60 to 90 days, microsegment one app, like a serious app, enforce east-west traffic, that kind of thing. So build a phase approach for whatever is right for your security architecture. And you should be much more successful on the security architect interview. If you'd like to become a security architect, an enterprise architect, a cloud architect, or an artificial intelligence architect, we run free weekly architecture webinars every week. On these architecture webinars, myself, potentially another expert will join me, depending upon the role, and we will talk about what we do in these architecture careers, all the skills you need, for example, to be a security architect or an enterprise architect, what have you, and all the steps you need to take to get your first architect job. And because this free webinar will be live on Zoom, you can ask me any type of architecture question you have, so you can help build your security architect career, cloud architect career, enterprise architect career, or any career you desire. To register for one of these free architecture webinars, there's a link in the description. Sign up for that webinar, and I look forward to meeting you in person and answering any questions I can to help you in your architect career. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your security architect career or your enterprise architect career or any other IT architect career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you in another video soon. Take care.